This is Kathy Biehl of EmpowermentUnlimited.net with a quick look at the astrology of the historic indictment that a Manhattan grand jury handed down on March 30th against a former president. Here's a chart for the time that the indictment was reported, that the existence of the indictment was reported. We don't know the time that the indictment was actually handed down. And at the time that I'm recording this, we do not know what's in the indictment, although a few minutes before I started this recording, an order was released, signed by the judge overseeing the case, allowing the DA to unseal the indictment. So perhaps we will know that really quickly. Do note that the way this is set up, the majority of the planets are at the top of the chart. This is a highly public event, not in private, as the grand jury proceedings have been. The ascendant is Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. It is a discriminating sign, an evaluative sign. And notice that it's ruled by Mercury. Mercury is over here in the 8th house of criminality, other people's money, debts, and it is square the moon. So there is a demand for some kind of action inherent in the release of this information, of this indictment. The whole gist of it, let me get rid of this. Hold on. We'll just do this. Someday I will have really fancy equipment and be able to do this. Notice that the sun, which is kind of the whole personality of the event, is in the 7th house of open enemies, and that we have a packed 8th house. Look how many placements are here in the 8th house of other people's money, investments, criminality. And this case does seem to involve the mischaracterization of a payment. A lot of people in the press have been saying that it is hush money paid to a porn star, but the real seriousness of this is that the Trump organization booked it as legal fees and I think took tax deductions for it. That's where the crime comes in. And also the fact, what has pulled Trump into this is that his signature was on a lot of the checks. Other things that are important in this are, look at what is happening up here in the 9th house of legal matters. Venus conjunct Uranus in Taurus. Look how tight that conjunction is. A number of things. Venus in Taurus, a woman, a sensual woman, money to a woman. Uranus in Taurus. This absolutely expresses the out of the blue appearance of this news, because earlier in the week, the public had been told that this particular grand jury is going on vacation. It only meets a few days a week as it is, that they were going to be on break for much of April because of a string of religious holidays. So no one was expecting this news when it came out. That's Uranus, the shock, the liberation, the bolt from the blue, something very suddenly breaking, a breakthrough, a surprise. And I will also point out that this particular conjunction at 16 Taurus is bringing an event from the past into the picture. In November, the full moon, the lunar eclipse in November was at 16 degrees Taurus with Uranus right smack on top of the moon. So Uranus has returned to the position that it occupied at the beginning of November. It has returned to and triggered the position of that eclipse. Something in this reporting of the indictment will tie to, in some way, things that happened on November 8, 2022. What day was that? Midterm election day. Some things are going to flip, break open, change. Just watch this space. Also important to see Mars up here in the 10th house, the most public house of the chart. Mars action, doing something, protecting. Cancer is the United States, actually, in an absolute tight look. Again, only 2 minutes apart, just as the Venus-Uranus conjunction is only 3 minutes apart. Mars in the 10th, tightly trine Saturn in the 6th, of routine, of grunt work, of steady work. There's something that's moving forward on things that have been going on for the public interest in a very incremental, step-by-step way during all of this. One thing that has caused some people a bit of concern, but oddly not me, is the placement of the moon. The moon's in the 11th house. Well, the moon is the public. The 11th house is dreams and wishes. There, you could say that for some people, this is the answer to something that they have been wanting for a long time. And it is exactly opposite, although out of sign, Pluto down here in the 5th house of speculation, risk-taking, children, romance, hidden things. So again, a woman, crime, a woman, something that was hidden, a woman, an affair, a risk, something with money. But let's look at the degree of the moon. The moon is almost into the next sign of Leo. The moon will not, or did not, make any other aspects. And you know, it was through with all of its major aspects in the sign of Cancer. And this is a condition that's called void of course. And generally, the teaching is that a void of course moon indicates that perhaps nothing comes of whatever the action is that's taken during the void, or things unravel, or things don't work out the way you think they're going to. However, there is precedent. I've been reminded that Obama was inaugurated with a void of course moon, and you could say, well, okay, did he get much done? Well, yeah, he did, although he was impeded greatly. So perhaps this is an indicator of a lot of foot dragging, a lot of fighting, but I believe this is not a major cause of concern in the long haul because of that connection to Pluto down there in the 5th house. Pluto is at the beginning of the sign of Aquarius, and it's not going to move off that degree. It's going to be there until June 11, and then it will duck back and it will go across exactly the degree of the moon in this, bringing something back up again in, so it will do that in June, and then again mid-December into most of January, and then again in September 2024. So there is a long tail for this, which is completely consistent with a criminal trial. Unless somebody pleads out pretty quickly, unlikely to happen in this case, this could go on. This could develop as long as those time periods that I have mentioned. But there will be a big push ahead when Mars, see where Mars is here at 2 degrees Cancer, it's going to move to the degree of the moon. It will hit 29 degrees Cancer in mid-May. So that is a time to flag in the back of your head for something major moving forward on this. Now, this isn't interesting just for its own sake. How about how it involves other people? Well, let's look at how it affects the prosecutor, Alvin Bragg. I have put his chart in the center. Since we don't have a time of birth for him, it's a solar chart, which has the sun on the ascendant. Okay, so a number of things that are worth pointing out to you with this. Look at the top of the chart. That moon is on his midheaven. This is absolutely lighting up his public role, and it is in a square it's a separating square or a demand for action with his son. So it has pushed him way out into the public, and it is demanding that he take action in furtherance of safeguarding the populace. Actually, is one way that this plays out. Also, notice there's a lot of stuff going on in the angles. All right, if we put the sun on the first house cusp, and that Pluto in Aquarius is down here, right inside his fourth house, which represents home, family, foundations, security, and it's also resonating with or triggering the career axis, because the opposite end of it is up there in the fourth house, very, very big. And notice that this Pluto is going to go back and forth over this spot, because in the fall it's going to go back to 27 degrees Pluto, so it's going to go back into his third house of communication and then cross it again and again. In February it'll show up here, and next year it's going to touch his Jupiter. So something profoundly important is going to be happening with him next year, growing out of this, involving this, and it will be in a very easy flow to his natal Jupiter. He has Jupiter in the 12th, which is the house of hidden things, the house of criminality, the ability to do things way in the background. You will see a Jupiter in the 12th house in the next series of charts that plays itself out in a very different way. Notice that he has a lot of activity in his sixth house of daily routine. So this is like a sped up, fast, highly energized time for him. The grand jury may be taking a breather, but I don't think he is going to really have a whole lot of time to just sit around and twiddle his thumbs. The north node in the sky is closing in on, because it's going backwards, closing in on his Mars in the partnership house, and it has to do with issues having to do with money. There's something that's part of the collective destiny that's involved with what he's doing, and that Venus and Uranus conjunction that I talked about in the earlier chart is also in his seventh house of open enemy. So there was an unlocking or a liberating aspect to this whole thing for him as well. Transiting Mars up here in his ninth house of legal matters has just crossed over his south node, finishing up his old way of doing things, and it's moving toward his Saturn in the ninth house, planet of mastery, planet of being an expert, planet of limitations. You get tested to see if you've been behaving in a responsible way. Things fall into place. If you haven't, something whams you. And in early April, transiting Mars hits his Saturn. So early April will bring a time that causes him to step up, step up, step up. An important thing to know that also in April 19, which could end up being a really important day, that is the anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing. On April 19th, there is a solar eclipse, the first one on the Aries-Libra axis, in his, just barely over into his seventh house. So it's on his seventh house cusp. Something speeds up, rams up, skyrockets, installs an upgrade involving either someone that he's working with or someone that he is partnered with, or perhaps this actually does involve this particular trial, this particular problem, and something shooting forward. Perhaps another witness comes on and decides to cooperate. But note that when this solar eclipse happens at 29 degrees Aries, it directly opposes his Sun. So this is a real important one where he will get a long distance view of the role of the legal system, of his concepts, the rules that he has lived by, his concepts about how society is supposed to work and the role that he plays with it. That will be something fascinating to watch. And then let's see what everybody really wants to be looking at, and that is how this all plays into Trump's chart. Now we're going to start with the one that is most commonly used. Anyone who follows me know that I always bring up that there are two birth times for this man. There's one that pretty much all the astrologers use, and then there is a second one that his wife Marla Maples told a colleague of mine is the correct time. So I'm thinking that the way events play out in the next year or so ought to give us a lot of information about which one is correct. But there are some things that are constants regardless of actually what degree the ascendant is. And I want to point these out. Look at this. Bragg's Pluto is on Trump's Neptune. Neptune's the planet of glamour, of illusion, of spin, of deceit, lying, creating something that isn't really quite there. Bragg's Pluto is on Trump's Neptune in the second house of money. So he is there for, and it's also a planet of fraud. This is a really almost like, you could look at this as a karmic link. And also I'm going to say Pluto's going to Trump Neptune. Horrible pun, I know, but in this, I would not want to, I would put money on the Pluto and not on the Neptune. The Pluto's going to go at whatever has been floating around that hasn't been accurately portrayed or shown. Up here in the 8th house of other people's money, investments, debt, financial stuff like the record keeping. Jupiter way up there has just finished its conjunction in Chiron and with Chiron, and that is opposite. Jupiter is opposite. Oh, look at this. So in the sky, we've got Jupiter and Chiron that have been traveling together in Trump's natal chart. Jupiter and Chiron are together and they're in the opposite sign. So with his Jupiter and Chiron in the second house, his good fortune comes from deals with others, getting his money in agreements with others. This is not someone who dreamed up ideas that then went into production, and there's always the thing about a deal. This is someone who is a deal maker, but with Chiron there too, it's also his Achilles heel. It's his sore spot, and we're getting an attack from the sky up above with that Jupiter and Chiron, forcing a different look at it all. Let me go through my notes. I got some more. Notice that up here in the 11th house. Okay, so the 11th house is organizations. This is Trump org. If this chart time is correct, he's got a lot of stuff in the 11th house, and Bragg's Saturn is very close to Trump's Mercury, Mercury being disclosures, information, papers, filings, statements, and Saturn being the clamping down and the authority influence. Notice also that Mars in the sky, which I've mentioned in the earlier chart, Mars is going to be moving across this territory. So Mars is going to meet up with Bragg's Saturn, I said, checking early April, and then later in April, it's going to cross Trump's Mercury, and one way that could play out would be with an attack on his communication, perhaps a gag order coming at that point. The Uranus, the Venus and Uranus conjunction, the suddenness is it falls into Trump's ninth house of legal matters. And with that Uranus heading for, but not quite in, his midheaven and career house, it hits next May, okay? It hits the midheaven next May, and by which I mean May of 2024. Okay, so if this time is correct, there's still a bit of a fuse before we see something really, really sudden happening with him, but there's still a lot of other activity going on now. Remember that I said that this Venus-Uranus conjunction is exactly where the November 8th lunar eclipse and Uranus conjunction took place. And more information is going to be coming out about that. That plays a role in it. Also, that is in a really uncomfortable to his natal Uranus. This is an aspect, 30-degree aspect is called a semi-sextile. And it is something that just bugs you. It's encouraging you to act differently. So this will be a constant annoyance that will bring all kinds of rogue and disruptive behavior out into the open from the accused. And it also is in an adjustment aspect to that Jupiter down there in the second house. It's an inconjunct or a quincunx. And the adjustment, this could really mess up a lot of his other agreements that he has, or it could require pulling in more money from other people. And as we've seen, there's been yet again an uptick in fundraising growing out of this news. And let's go back to looking at Mars. Okay, so as I said, Mars is going to move across first Bragg's Saturn and then Trump's Mercury, and then it's going to go across the signature for the money stuff with the family organization, Saturn and Venus. And then as this happens, ultimately, then it's going to go across where the moon is right now. And then in mid-June, where's it going to be? It's going to be on top of Trump's Pluto in the 12th house, which is the house of hidden matters. Mars is going to be taking action against things that involve hidden matters. This is one of the houses of criminality. Additionally, and also self-undoing, self-sabotage. So I would expect in early June, the anger level to have yet another uptick, and possibly some things to start really coming to light. And after Mars moves out of that exact conjunction, it is going to set off, it's going to hit the middle degrees of Leo, which is going to set off this placement, this Venus-Uranus conjunction. Is going to set off 16 degrees. It's going to set off what happened at the November 2022 lunar eclipse. It's going to set off whatever comes to light at the May Scorpio lunar eclipse. So it's going to make basically what's called a T-square that will connect communication, third house, tweeting, truthing, whatever it is, the internet up there, ninth house, belief systems, legal matters, and something really big and forceful happening then. A few more things about the framework. I know I'm just doing this piecemeal. Let's look at Neptune. Neptune, planet of gaslighting, misinformation, transcendence, glamour, illusion, making things look really good, whether they're there or not. Neptune is in an exact, very tight. Look again, by minutes, hardly at all different. exact trine to Venus in Cancer. So something here about oh, that's porn star. That's a woman on the screen. Neptune's the screen. But it also involves the Trump org, because it's the 11th house of group associations and business organizations. That's also pulling in the conjunction to Saturn. So this particular indictment release does have something to do with Neptune illusion or fraud in the 8th house, other people's money, debts, and the connection to Saturn and Venus, money stuff, family stuff, organizational stuff. There may be a connection. Other women might be involved. Another woman might be involved. His wife might be involved. There's no telling. And other things, two other things to notice. Saturn, newly in the sign of Pisces, is in his 7th house of open enemy. So a lot of people could be turning against him. And the other important thing is, if this birth time is correct, Pluto in Aquarius is in his house of children, risk-taking, gambling, romance. If we change the time, if we go to the earlier time, it adjusts the ascendant back just a bit. And if that happens, Pluto is in his, down here, sorry, 6th house of business as usual, daily routine, how he spends his time, also his health. Could be important. If this is the correct time, that conjunction between Venus and Saturn in Cancer falls in his 9th house of things that are hidden, self-sabotage, self-undoing, again, house of criminality. Neptune is still in the 8th house of other people's money, debts, etc. So its trine simply flows into and lights up a different house. With this time, his Mercury, this pileup in early Cancer, is in the 11th house of group organization. So that continues the focus on Trump org, and then his sun is there, and so is this Uranus. With this earlier birth time, the Venus-Uranus aspect of this is front and center. It's in the career house. And notice that the node at 5 Taurus has just moved across his midheaven. If this time is correct, there is a lunar eclipse in October that will end the Taurus Scorpio eclipses that we have been through, involving resources, money, etc. And it would be exactly on his midheaven, his public life, and that could bring a big change in not just his public standing, but perhaps even where he's living. So there should be events happening that should let us know pretty soon over the course of the year which of these is correct in terms of timing. In both charts, Neptune stays in his 2nd house of personal resources. So, acting as if rather than having. And in the earlier birth time, Jupiter's in his house of communication. And we do know he is able to talk. One other thing I want to look at, as I record this, he's scheduled for arraignment at 2:15 on April 4th. Question is it going to happen? His attorneys say it's going to happen, but we'll see. Now, interestingly, notice that the moon down here in the second house of money and values, the moon's void, of course. The moon has finished making all the aspects, all the major aspects it's going to make before it changes sign. But it is in a sextile or a harmonious aspect with the moon in which was here in the indictment release chart. So that there's a possibility of moving forward on it. There's a packed ninth house in the arraignment chart with the sun, Chiron, Jupiter, and then Mercury, which has moved into the sign having to do with money. Ninth house of legal matters. Neptune is solidly in the eighth house having to do with fraud, financial fraud, and a lot of stuff up here in the 10th and public house. The North Node is smack on the ascendant. So this is kind of like a thing, an event that pushes us toward a collective destiny. A lot of information coming through with that Venus, with that Mercury there. The other things I want to mention specifically is that this is squaring Pluto. It's a separating square, but next year when Pluto moves back into Aquarius and starts moving actually off of zero, it's going to activate the potential of this chart. Again, no freaking, no screaming, but that's too late. Criminal trials take a long time. All of this together says it's not going away. So it's not like he's going to file a motion to dismiss and that it gets somewhere. It's a process. There's a lot going on, and just notice this too. At the time of the arraignment, of the scheduled arraignment, Mars in the 11th, going against the organization, is in a harmonious aspect to the North Node, and Mars has just moved off of its trine to Saturn. I don't know. He could show up. The only thing that makes me say maybe he won't show up is that void, of course, moon. But this all ties nicely into the earlier chart. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I'd say it bodes well. And I'm sure there'll be reason for me to look at this some more. If you'd like a bigger picture understanding of how this might fit into things, I have a long interview on Annette Dion's YouTube channel. I will put the link to the video below, and I'm going to be popping up again this week. So thanks for watching. If you like it, please like, share, subscribe, all those good things.